Welcome back to My Drum's Chronic, but I'm Iconic, the space where we dive deep into the extraordinary world of neurodiversity, empowerment, and embracing brilliance. I'm thrilled to be your host, and I'm joined by Gail Suitor, a neurodiversity consultant, to guide us through this journey of discovery, inspiration, and celebration. In a society that often values conformity over uniqueness, we're here to challenge the status quo and champion the beauty of diversity in all its forms. From neuro-distinct perspectives to stories of triumph over adversity, each episode is a testament to the power of embracing our differences and unleashing our true potential. Join us as we explore the untapped brilliance within neurodistinct minds, uncover the stories of resilience and growth, and learn from the trailblazers that are reshaping the narratives around neurodiversity. Whether you're a neurodistinct yourself, a caregiver, educator, or ally, this podcast is for you. So grab yourself a cup of tea, your headphones, open your mind, and get ready to be inspired. Welcome to a world where uniqueness is celebrated, differences are embraced, and brilliance knows no bound. So, welcome to My Trauma's Chronic, but I'm Iconic, where we dare to be different together. So, without further ado, let's welcome Gail Suitor. Can you share a bit about your background and what led you to become a neurodiversity consultant?
Yeah. So I grew up as an undiagnosed neurodiverse or neurodistinct with a neurodistinct brain. I have dyslexia and ADHD. I didn't get diagnosed with ADHD until I was 53 or maybe 50. So I definitely struggled in school, and I was always curious about the differences in brains. So I ended up going to graduate school for special education. And graduate school, is that the same here as in the UK? It's like, so after we go to 4 years of college, we can go to graduate school and get a master's degree. So I got a master. Go ahead.
No, we just have like it was a postgraduate. So we have an undergraduate,
Yeah.
which is three to 4 years, and then you
Yeah.
do a postgraduate, but it's just university. It's just called university.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
There's
So I went to postgraduate for for special education, and I just loved it. It was the first time that I could hyper focus on school. So it was, let's say, sort of our elementary school, which is K through 8th. We don't get like A, B, C's, or D grades. It's more just, comments. And so my comments were always like, she doesn't focus, she doesn't apply herself, she's lazy, she's, all of that. And then in high school, I was a CD student, which is not good here. And then got into university probably by the skin of my teeth. And then I learned how to knit, which allowed me to sit in class and just listen and still move. So it helped. Like then, once I got to university, I was doing much better in school. And then finally, when I got to do my passion, which was special education, I was, aced it. And my oldest, I'm one of 4 girls, and my second to oldest sister had dyslexia and was diagnosed early on because she wasn't learning how to read. I think I could just cover that I didn't know how to read. I masked it. And so anyway, that was when I was in my 20s. And then I was in special education in some form, whether it was I worked in what we call here independent schools, which are schools that aren't public. And oh, sorry, my dog is going to bark if you hear, sorry. So anyway, they aren't public, so they don't have to go with what the government says. And usually they're looked at as more I don't know, exclusive or better education because they can pick a mission and go with it instead of try to be everything to everyone. And so I was sort of on the cusp of these schools discovering that just because you think and learn differently doesn't mean that you're not smart. And so I spent most of my career starting learning centers. They call them learning centers or support centers for students with neurodiversity. And I did that for 28 years in some form. It was, different things at different schools. But I think really what drove me into it was to try and help other students avoid the experience I had in school.
I feel like there's one thing that I relate, which I discovered literally a few days ago. But like on the 30th of April, is like I was thinking like, oh my God, like how didn't my school didn't pick up? Because like, like you said, you're struggling in education and like, there are like students who struggle with education, but it's just a learning difficulties or the way that things are explained. But then there's, learning difficulties and disabilities and or like neurodivergence that make learning difficult. And I was
Yeah.
thinking every time I'm amazing at maths. Like maths, it was like thing that I was known for to always excelling at.
Yeah.
And I would get really simple mistakes and I'll get them wrong. I can answer the 10 marker questions, but the 1 mark questions or two, I always and they say, well, she's careless. She rushes. And I'm like, I was like to myself when they would say that or they would write that in my reports, I'd be like, I don't rush. I just take my time and do the work. But my brain speed and the average brain speed is very different. Mine was like going 10 miles an hour. 10,000, sorry. 10 miles an hour is not that. Like 10,000 miles per hour. And I never realized that. And I was non-verbal in school as well. I only speak to a select few people. I'm like, how did you not notice that I was like I was very much screaming autism. And yeah. But like what
Yeah.
does diversity mean to you? And do you think it's important in today's society?
Well, first of all, I think neurodiversity is the whole spectrum of the human brain. Right. So it's from one end of the spectrum to the other. And it's interesting, we were talking before we started that I feel like the studies are showing, so I have dyslexia and ADHD, but studies in the human brain are showing that sort of autism is on one spectrum of being like a microprocessor for details. And that's how like autistic brains are superpowered by their structure to collect details and be interested in details and be able to look at and notice things that other people may not have noticed in the details and the connections of how those details work. Versus on the other spectrum is a dyslexic brain that struggles to collect details but can see the larger connections. So it's almost like the autistic brain is the telescope, the microscope, and the dyslexic brain is like the 50,000 feet. Like seeing how the whole world is connected. And so we get gists, but we don't collect the details. And so I think and then there's everybody in between. And then you add in everybody's trauma, everybody has something, right? So it's like affects how our brain works. And studies have shown that trauma actually does affect how anyone perceives or learns. it really does affect the brain's ability to be open and function in, I would hate to say normal because I don't believe in that. So in its usual fashion, let's say. So, and I guess for me, neurodiversity, part of what I fight against, I would say, as a neurodiversity advocate, is the idea that there is a normal brain locked up somewhere that everybody should measure against. Oh, we're better at math than a normal person, or we're worse at reading than a normal person, right? And so I just feel like, and even to say that even the idea of a brain being disabled actually sort of rubs me the wrong way. So to me, I feel like there's the disability put on you by society, and then there's a medical disability. So I have a daughter who's in a wheelchair. No matter what you do or what society does, she's not going to be able to run, right? So for me, it's like, to say a brain is disabled, I would just say it's differently abled. And when we're on either side of the spectrum, I feel like our strengths are more pronounced and our weaknesses are more pronounced. So you're really great at, right? Sorry. You're really great at math, but maybe there's like, sitting in an overstimulating environment is not your brain's thing, because it collects every detail of that environment.
It's really like, I think this is where our views are different, because I think neurodivergence is a disability. In fact, even though it's different from, the average or neurotypical brain, I feel like it is very paralyzing. Like I have autism and ADHD, it can be very paralyzing where you're unable to, access things. And no matter how much accommodations are made, you still won't be able to access certain things.
I see what you're saying. Yes, yeah. I can see that. But to me, that's part of a spectrum of abilities versus, I know it's controversial. My view is controversial on this. And I definitely have things that, I totally get your view. And I understand why mine is controversial. However, part of why what I would say bristle at the idea of calling it disabled is that it makes us seem lesser than.
But wouldn't limited capabilities in certain areas not make you less than as a human being, but less capable of achieving something? So if you are somebody with, for example, if I was going to go to an accident emergency and I need to go, there's no way that I can go to an accident. This is a real life example. There's no way that I can go to an accident emergency without having to go through an ambulance, because I wouldn't be prioritized straight away to go into a room by myself. So even if it's a smaller case, even if I've a concussion or something like that, I have to wait 6 to 8 hours to be able to access healthcare because of my neurodivergence, because I'm unable to handle things. So I feel like our views are different, but
No, and I know I take some heat for saying I don't really like the term disability, right? But I also acknowledge, even my daughter is who's in the wheelchair is no, Mom, no, it's a disability, yes. But I also feel like with that, label of disability, we're leading with what we can't do instead of what we do well. And so to me, it's like, I feel like every person on earth is born with the brain that they need. It's like highly tuned to the reason why they are here, to like follow their life's mission. So when I was working in special education, so many of these students would have been labeled disabled and that they can't read and all of that. But yet, when they came to my classroom and they were taught and it was made accessible for them, they could read, right? They could learn that. I mean, there are some cases in the extreme ends where it's never a fluid reading experience, or even in math, it's some kids will always struggle with it. So I can see the disabled part in that. But it's like they can go out into the world and they're not going to be doing what they don't do well. They're going to be doing what they do well. So to me, it's more about
like
focusing on the positive, like focusing on the positives, and even to like gain access to work, right? Or to like getting hired. It's like, you don't talk about, I feel like we trained our students, at least in the United States, to talk about the accommodations they need, but not what they bring to the table.
I feel
right?
like it's great to go for a strength-based approach instead of a deficit-based.
Yeah.
However, I feel like it's like, it depends. Like for me, like if I have certain accommodations that need to be made, they need to be made by my employer. Then it is because I'm saying, well, you have other applicants who don't need these accommodations, but I do, and this is going to make me easier to access the work. And the thing is, it's not coming out of their pocket; it's coming
Right.
out of, the access to work. That's the scheme that we have in the UK.
Yeah.
So I feel like it is because I feel like even though we can do more, I feel like an employer needs to understand how you can be at your worst or how you can be on an average day for you
Mm-hmm.
to gain the support that you need. And if they don't like you, then they can just fuck off, really. Because
Totally.
it's
They're
like
missing out.
they're missing out and it's not affecting me because I can go get another job anywhere else, And
Yeah.
I feel like I feel like that the world is, let's go back to the reading example that you said about,
Mm-hmm.
with the accessibility made. But the thing is, the world is designed for neurotypicals. And if it's designed for neurotypicals, it gets harder to access those services. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you work in special education, right?
Yeah.
And when you work in special education, just to get into special education
They
is
had to be labeled
yeah,
disabled. Yeah.
yeah, and it is, and I feel like disability or disabled is not. I'm not saying that you're saying it's like a bad word. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just
Yeah. Yeah.
exploring the
Yeah.
idea. I think like disability is a great word. I do have this disability. I'm
Yeah.
like I like when I speak about myself, I am person first then diagnosis. I'll be like, I'm Reese me. I have autism, ADHD, emotional unstable personality disorder, stuff like that. But that is part of me, and I feel like it comes into the this controversial conversation, like it leads to another controversy, whereas invisibility versus visibility. So
Yeah. That's true. I
mm,
agree. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And I totally see what you're saying. And I think that I will give you the point because here's why. I just feel like in the UK, you guys are so much further ahead than the US on
mm,
disability law, on celebrating disabilities, on giving access to disabilities. So in the United States, 80% of autistic people are unemployed. And to get services, like the disability services that we offer, is like poverty level, right? So we're not, it's like we're not supporting people with disabilities who need support in other ways. And we're shunning the word disability. So when they go to get hired, everybody's like, well, maybe not them. So literally, I was at a school conference. It was called NAIS, which is for us, it's National Association of Independent Schools. And the theme was diversity. So I go there. There's like, I think it was 3,000 people there. And every time I brought up neurodiversity as part of diversity, everyone would be like, oh, but not those people.
I feel like,
and so, people... yeah,
sorry,
go ahead.
No, it's like, I feel like when people have like, the thing is, it's really like, I feel like the UK is advanced in many areas when it comes to disabilities compared to other countries, like America, for example. But I feel like this is very controversial, what I'm going to say.
Yeah, let's do it, because that's what gets people listening and worked up. Yeah. That's why I'm always like, I just have to be out there.
But I feel like I have to give like a warning.
Yeah.
But I feel like I feel like they're behind in disabilities, but it's a choice. Like the government, not the people, the government is a choice. How can you be so advanced in technology, STEM, like space exploration, but you can't be advanced in disabilities? Like, how can you have an economy which is trillions of pounds?
Yeah.
And you can't do that. I feel like at one point or the other, at one point, it's not become okay. Like this will be addressed soon. This has become a choice for America. I feel like, and I feel like I feel like there's no other excuse. Like you clearly can do initiatives during COVID. COVID was even though it's a pandemic and things happen much quicker because it's affecting the whole world. As if like you go to war. It's like we were in the war with a pandemic. If we were in war with a country, like a world war happened again, something like this. But things need to be prioritized, and I feel like in the UK we're having the same problem right now. Apparently we have sick note culture, and we, our Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is saying absolutely terrible things about disabilities and reducing the support.
Oh, like people are using it as an excuse or something? Is that what he's trying to say?
People, I'm paraphrasing, but this is literally what he said, but I'm just paraphrasing it. Everybody is saying everyday struggles into mental health, labeling it as mental health. And I'm like, well, everyday struggles is mental health. Like, it's getting to a point where it's so debilitating that I can't do anything else. It's like, for example, I'm like, I have PIP, but I have universal credit just because I need to have those because I came out of care, and I get what I need. And I also have the local authority, funding my staff, my placement, and stuff like that because I have a high level of needs. But even though I don't, work every single day, when I can, I contribute to the economy. I contribute to our country. When I can work, I go out and work. Like I have paid, I might not do it as often as a full-time job, but I do things to contribute to our economy. And also putting our Prime Minister I don't even like to call him a Prime Minister because he wasn't even elected in. It was a lucky chance. It's like he won the lottery. I'm going to be honest with you. He just won the lottery. That's what it seems like. And he's doing whatever he wants. But can't wait for the election. It's the 2nd of May. In the evening, I'm going to go vote as well. So make sure people vote. Because there's more vote coming up as well. But
yeah, same with the United States. Make sure you vote too.
Yeah. Like, you don't know what you're doing. Like, You don't know because you come from such a privileged life. You went to private school, which is an
Totally.
independent school, into one of the most expensive private schools in the country and the most esteemed. And your parents are, oh, and there's like policies. Like I know we're going off mental health. We're kind of raised mental health at the same time and neurodiversity, but they're sending people like illegal immigrants to Rwanda, and I'm like, okay, you're doing that. I'm like, but that country, is it safe? Because they're not in like active war, but they have a lot of civil issues within the
Tribal
country.
issues. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
and you're
Yeah.
like sending people off and you're doing whatever. And you don't know what the like, not basic, the average human's basic needs are and how difficult it is. You can't just come up from a privileged place and be like, well, people are not trying hard enough. Your wife is not paying taxes in the UK. So you're one to speak, like, and his policies even deport his own parents, can deport his own parents back to Rwanda. Like, get a grip. And people's lives are not like worth anything. Like when I say worth anything, they're not like, oh, you contribute to the
Yeah.
economy. You're worth like you're worthy of being a human being. You do not contribute to an economy. Have cancer. You're bed bound. You're not contributing to the economy. You're not worthy of being a human being. Like fuck that shit. Like he has no idea what he's doing. He doesn't understand the basic needs of a human and how hard it is to earn money, especially when there's only like he said something around 800 something 800,000 people are on benefits
Like
in
benefits.
England.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
like, there's like I'm gonna check this now, but I think there's tens of millions of people living in England because it's like the ratio is fine. I don't There's 55.98 million people living in the United Kingdom in 2018. That's
Yeah.
when the last census was done, I think.
Yeah.
There's 880,000 pounds. I mean 800 whatever
Let me
thousand,
do that.
which is absolutely nothing. There's less than a million people on benefits. I think he was just talking about England, but can't be
Yeah.
sure. I'm like, that's absolutely fine. Like there's
It's
like
low.
yeah, and we're like it's just 55 million people in the
Yeah.
country, and you're worrying about something that's less than a million. We have the money. We need the money, even though we're in recession. When we need the money to pay for this lady, I think she's in the House of Lords or the House of Commons, for her to pay in a civil suit £15,000 out of taxpayers' money. If you can fund that, you can fund things for disabled people. She said
Yeah.
something on Twitter. It wasn't even her party or whatever she's, representing. It was her own tweet. So she can pay out of her own money or reimburse the government because why can't you fund? Sorry, I just went on a whole rant there. I do
Keep
apologize.
going. No,
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
yeah. And I'm just going to say ditto and double down for the United States on how
Yeah.
they treat their people.
And
Yeah.
I don't understand. It's like like all the people in politics, right? Not all the people, most people in politics, they come from this privileged background. You don't know
Totally. They have
how-
access to the government. That's how they are getting actually elected, right? So they
Nobody
have
cares
access to begin
about-
with.
Nobody cares about, the average person. I feel like the countries that are doing really, really well in terms of mental health and stuff like that, they have average people in power. Like,
Yeah.
and not like
Or
not even
people
having to
with
be a-
experience of suffering or
yeah.
trauma or whatever. Yeah.
And also
Yeah. The United, yeah.
it's like and also I don't want like if like another old rich white guy. We need somebody who's,
Oh my God.
not young, but like quite young, who's understand the problems because you're not only catering to the elderly or the older people, but you'll also have to cater to the younger people who are going to be the futures of this country. Are we going to repeat the
Yeah.
cycle? And how many times do we have to repeat the cycle until we hear something? I mean, we have a change because this cycle keeps going around and round and round again. And I don't want my children to go through that. but they are,
Yeah.
and that's it.
Right.
And it's like something needs to happen because we can't just have these people with the finances to do so, like the 1% being in politics.
Yeah.
They're the 1%. How about the 99? We need the
Right.
99%.
Totally. Yeah. And the question is it possible with the systems that we have? But that's a whole nother can of worms, right? It's because you have to have, at least for the United States, you have to have a ton of money and people investing in you, and you have to be able to be well spoken, and you have to be connected, and you have to do this and that to get all of that done. And so for the average person to do it, it's not going to happen. Or here's the second thing. It's like, I look at what the president has to go through, and I'm like, who would run for that position? You're basically in prison for 4 years, like totally drinking from a fire hose. I'm like, no. And our current political situation is so polarized by the few on both sides. Even though in general, it's not the general person's thing, but all of these polarized people are accessing the social media and the messaging and the news and all of that. They're so organized in getting their message out. It makes everybody feel like that's what the other person thinks, when really most of normal people are can agree on most things, right?
And I feel like
so it's like
unruly.
Yeah, it's and disrespectful to each other and mean. And so I do think that young people are going to bring it. I just feel like after teaching for 28 years, I began to see the pattern of how we call them generations, but so how each sort of group of young people were going to change the world. So I remember teaching what we call the millennials, which are, I can't remember what their ages are, probably from 30 to maybe from 30 to 40.
So millennials are from 19. So they're from, sorry,
yeah, were born.
They were born from 1981 to 1996.
Yeah. So they're 30 to 40, or around 30 to 50, maybe. No, it's like, 30 to 40s, around there. Who knows? Math is not my thing. You're the mathematician. Come on. How old are they? But this is simple math. That's going to be too hard.
44. The highest age will be 44.
Highest is 44. So when I was teaching them, it was like I would always in my classroom have individual little box of school supplies for each child. They were the first to bring to my attention that was wasteful, right? They're like, we can share the supplies. We don't need individual supplies. Like, that's manufacturing more plastic boxes. It's like it's wasting crayons. It's wasting. So I was like, wow. And of course they grew up and they did car sharing and they shared their flats and they made like startups here in the United States, and they like worked together in these little teams to innovate. And so they really changed not just how we looked at things, but even how the economy ran. And so the youngest people right now, this new generation, we call them Gen Z, is all about unity and oneness. And they see, just like you were talking, they see that if one person's suffering, we're all suffering. Like, it brings down the whole to leave just one behind. And so I really do think that you guys are going to change how we do everything. It's like you're not going to just be making startups and making little pods. You guys have the vision to pull it together. The whole world is a pod, right? And I feel like COVID proved that, right? We shut borders down. We wore masks. We did everything, and we are a pod on this earth. We didn't stop COVID. We're just one pod that is going to experiencing everything together. So our weakest link or our person that's left behind affects the whole pod. So the question is, can our governments, as they are currently, boy, we are way off on a tangent, but can our governments, the way we are currently, actually service the pod? And so far, it has not been proven. They haven't been able to do it. So then,
I don't think. The thing is, I don't think it's going to happen in the next 100 years. If it happens,
don't speak it. We want it to happen. Don't limit it. Come on. You're powerful. You're starting the wave with your podcast right now. We talk to.
Can I be okay? Let me explain my thought, right?
Okay. All right.
Okay, these 1%, their children, they're likely to be in government. They're likely to be able, to be in high places in the authority. Oh, sorry, highest places in government, with great authority, and their children, unless they're exposed to diverse range of people, what's going to happen? They're going to go to a private school. They're probably white. Let's be honest. They're probably white. They're going to go to a private school, which is predominantly white. They're going to be around people whose parents have a similar mindset. That's going to be passed on to the children. And what is the hope for within the next 100 years of this happening if that cycle is not broken? When is it going to become to a point where it's more accessible for anyone and people feel confident? The average person feels confident to try and get into politics, because there's only a few people. Like my mind is going blank, but there's this South Asian woman. She is like quite young. She's in her early 20s, and she is a member of parliament for Birmingham, I think, or some part of Birmingham. And it's like, when will this ever be? When will the cycle break? Because I feel like the cycle continues, and right. So I'm like,
okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Here's why. Because this generation of young people, it's the first time, and I think maybe this is just a United States statistic, but for the first time, this generation is 50-50. It's not predominantly white. It's like 51% person of color and 49% the other question is, what is classified as white? But now that 23andMe is coming out, everybody has different origins and everything. So to me, that's another whole question. But yes, so this is the first generation, I think it's in the United States, that is not predominantly white. It's 50-50. So the more people of color, or the more we realize that we are all just a spectrum of humanity, the less skin color is going to be able to be used as a privilege.
I feel for me that's a very shocking statistic. But according to the UK's so I was right when I was thinking, okay, the census happened really recently. So 3 years ago, census was done. 82% of people in England and Wales identified as white. 18% belong to Black, Asian, mixed, or other ethnic groups. So there's 18%.
Yeah.
And that's just probably a couple of millions, which is
Yeah.
not that much. And then in America, if it's 50-50,
This will be the first generation that will be 50-50.
and this generation is ending.
So maybe it's the world. I mean, white people are not the predominant race of the world.
I don't know about that. I don't.
Yeah.
In America, according to 2020 census, 60.1% is white, 18.5% is Hispanic, 12.2% is Black, and 5.6% is Asian.
Yeah. And they got that statistic from the public schools self-identification for the younger people now. So it's coming, right? But anyway, here's the other thing. I think if we, gosh, I don't even know how to say it. Right now, politics is ruled by the white privileged people, right? But who's voting?
Well, this is, I've had a conversation with a variety of people.
Right?
So today's the 2nd of May, where the local elections are happening. So people, I don't know about other areas, but people in London are voting for their local government. So like City Khan, the other people.
Yeah.
We all know City Khan is going to win again. He always wins again. He's amazing. He does a lot for young people. But what were we talking about? Sorry, my mind just went blank.
We were trying to if we're the ones voting, can we make it change? But currently in the United States, that's the only people there are to vote for, right?
People don't vote because I've talked to a lot of people, adults even, like adults. I'm talking about the millennial group and the Gen Z group. Gen Z. It just doesn't make sense. Generation Z, the younger generation.
The younger generation. The youngest. We could say the youngest generation, maybe.
Yeah, the youngest generation. No, actually, we're not Gen Z. Gen Z is not the youngest generation. We got Generation Alpha as well, but they're not old enough to vote. The youngest generation that is able to vote.
Okay, we got it.
They are saying, and millennials, from those who I've spoken to, are saying they don't want to vote because they do not feel like voting is actually going to help. Some people think there's a lot of controversy around Tories have made it easier for people not from the United Kingdom. That is the right wing, have made it easier for them to win. And then the third thing is, if you vote, so what? Shit is going to happen anyway. And people don't feel like they have a choice. Like, none of these people I can identify with, so I'm not going to vote. And I'm like, you know what? That is just so. Personally, I think there's two things I think about voting. I feel like voting should be mandatory.
Yeah.
I think everybody should have to vote. But before that, I think that should ever come into place, there should be a section in your voting that says, I do not identify with any of these options. There should be people being able to say no, because it's like any form you feel, from race to gender to age, maybe not age, but where they have an other section.
Oh yeah.
I've seen that with ages as well. For those,
I mean, age matters as far as identification, I think, don't you?
What do you mean by define identification?
Well, if you're going to identify yourself, I wouldn't identify myself as a young person.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? I'm a white-haired lady. 57 years old. I'm not young anymore. You know, I'm definitely, yeah. So, yeah. Well, I just also think that right now it's a closed system, whether they like to say it is, or it, you know, like, oh, it's a democracy, or oh, it's a republic. It's a closed system because, for at least for the United States, there's two parties. There's other people that are running, but then you feel like, oh, if you don't vote for one of the two parties, it's basically like not voting. That's how people treat it.
But I
Right?
feel like there should be like, you know, when, for example, in Parliament, I don't know how it works in the United States. So there's rows of people. Like, okay,
Yeah.
there's two rows of people, not two rows, but two horizontal with
Yeah.
nice
Yeah. Facing
whatever.
things. Two
So
two
hopefully,
opposing
our
groups.
editor can put a picture up.
Mhm.
There's two things. The speaker, a deputy speaker. I don't know if the speaker. So the Mr. Speaker is currently a man right now, and his and the lawyers, the barristers, that's it. So when they're
Mhm.
making key decisions, they're going to be like, okay, go to the left if you agree with this, go to the right if you agree with that, and politicians will move themselves accordingly. It takes 10 minutes to do. So long, just move. Make your mind up. Like, and you know these like arguments like these like voting
Yeah.
is
Yeah. Yeah. Then. Yeah.
you
Then.
can't
Yeah.
heck. Why is it taking you 10 minutes? Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
um it's
But
going
even that to me, I feel like is
back.
like pulling a dichotomy because it's never black and white. It's never
No,
one side
that's what
or
I'm trying to
right.
say. The people, and
Yeah.
then if they don't agree with it, they go sit in a certain place where they don't agree with both. Like basically like abstaining, I guess. And they're like,
Yeah.
but I'm like, why? Also, if members of parliament can do that, why can't we do that when we're voting? Because trust me, most of these options are just useless. Like in the
Yeah.
UK,
It's true. You know
it's
what would be interesting?
and I go rating people, and nobody's got except one person. Nobody's got over like 2 points.
Yeah.
Like I rate it out of 10, and like
Yeah. It's interesting. What would be interesting is if we made voting mandatory and that an actual majority of the people had to vote that leader in. So if let's say 30% abstain because they don't identify or don't approve of the choice, and then nobody gets elected, we restart. They're out
without government.
until we get, yeah. What if we did that? So
I
they
feel like
actually
my
have to.
autism is like really not agreeing with that. My autism is like no structure.
Right, that was a dyslexic autism short circuit. But do you see what I'm saying? Like, we don't have somebody that we don't like in power or that we
And I
can't
think we
identify
never
with.
will. I feel like if the majority, if the general public, not the 1%, I feel like the 1%, you know, their views, their lives, their whatever matters,
Yeah.
but they can afford to do whatever. Even let's just say they
Yeah.
because of the cost of living crisis, everything increases by 50%. So
Yeah.
like if a loaf of bread was 80%, 80 pence, so like probably like 50 cents in America. If it's 80 pence and they increase it by 50%,
Yeah.
what it would be £1 and 20 pence. It's not going to affect them. Whereas an average family, it will. It
Yeah.
will affect them significantly because they're like, okay, then I need to think about how I use my energy. I need to think about how I use my gas. I need to think about how I'm using my heating. And
Yeah.
it's just a cycle. And I'm like, well, 1% can afford. They don't care. They can pretty much afford to do so unless they're bankrupt. But like 1% can afford to do that. And it's not affecting them
Right.
that much. So why
Yeah.
can't we have people like the average person in places of power?
All right, let's start. I'm gonna take us off of that and let's start fixing the economy part of it. So here's my vision. You ready? This is another controversial vision.
Yeah, that's right.
So I feel like the way we, at least in the United States, the way we hire people is we have like job descriptions, and then we look for somebody that can basically do almost everything in the job description, right? They might not be good at something. To me, in the United States, that is what forces neurodistinct people out of the workforce, because we have really high interest in some areas, but a disability in others, right? So I'm advocating that when you form a company, you look at it as you're forming a team, and you hire for competencies, different competencies like skills. So for instance, if you're on an American football team, not soccer, we call it soccer, you call it football. But if you're on an American football team, you have a quarterback. He doesn't go as a lineman, during the rest of the game. He does one thing really well. And every team member on that team does their one thing really well. So if you are hiring your workforce like that, you're trying to form a championship team, you hire the people that do that one thing really well, right? Instead of asking somebody to be what we call jack of all trades, master of none, right? So it's like, oh, you hire a receptionist who can welcome people and be friendly and make them feel special when they come through the door. But then they also want you to do data entry and be really accurate with the details. And then they want you to also be able to order the supplies. And all of those are usually not in one person, right? If you're a really great data person, if somebody's coming in and you're supposed to greet them, you're going to be like, wait a minute, so you don't mess up the details. But if you're a people person, you're going to like drop the data and be like, oh, welcome. And then your data is going to be a mess. See what I'm saying? Like the job description.
I'm just thinking about somebody coming and greeting me. Like, no, like
Right. Yeah, that's true. Right, yeah.
I feel like
True.
that's an American thing. Like,
yeah. So, but back to that. So if we're hiring based on competencies, then neurodistinct people will be able to contribute to the economy.
I think,
right?
I feel otherwise.
Okay.
I think, I feel like a person should know the basics of everything on the job description. They don't need to excel at it, but they need to know the basics. Like I can't imagine like a role where you have one set of responsibilities. Because it's like for example, when I hire people, this is the process. I think you have your own team as well, right?
No, I'm a solo. Yeah, yeah. Me, myself. I have me, myself, and I. That's who I have. Yeah.
So in my team, like, okay, so for example, if I was hiring for a website, I need a website done, and I'm doing it. I'm like, okay, I need these set of people, because what if one person's not in? You can't rely solely on one person to do that, or they go on annual leave, and then you're like, okay, we don't have for 3 weeks, but the data.
Well, I'm not saying that it's only one person, but I'm also, it could be a group of people that are doing that, but that's their niche.
Yeah, I'm just like, but it's really strange, because then you're like, it's like, but like, why? I feel like everybody needs a well-rounded person. I feel like if you can do the basics, that's
do
great.
we really?
Well, I prefer well-rounded people, because I'm like, if I give you a role, I need you to be able to, like, I'll explain the role, that you do an induction, if they have a manager, get them to do an induction, answer any questions, have access to me and the manager. But I would like someone to be competent, like in like all the basic areas. But
what if they were super competent in one area so far that they take your team further, but yet they're not well
I would
rounded.
probably be like, this is great, but you need to, I probably won't get involved because I'm like, this is a team problem more than a managerial problem. What I'd be like is, you know what? It's great they can excel in this area. So maybe we can make adjustments. Or if, somebody who's already doing that role
Yeah.
wants you to do it for a few days in the week and they do it in a few days of the week, we can. But somebody solely based, or a set of people solely based on one part, even if you're an engineer, right? Even if you're working on like a flight, right? Even if you're painting yeah, an aeroplane. If you're painting an aeroplane, even though you could be painting two different sides, I mean, two
Hmm.
different sides, you still have to coordinate with other person. You still need to be doing the exact same thing because one coat that slightly overlaps, then that plane's aerodynamics or whatever it's called is
Yeah.
out. I feel like it's great to excel in an area, but I'm like, but what if like, and then it's like annual leaves and stuff. Like, what if somebody wants to? What if all of them wants time off? But I don't. This is one thing I don't believe in. I just think people need to be versatile. Like, and it's just I don't know.
See, I think that we all have our special interests, right? Maybe some of our neurodistinct brains are driven more towards our special interests, but if everybody could excel in their special interest area, and then it everybody's gifts are supporting the other person's gifts, it's about interdependence. Do you see what I'm saying? It's not about independence or like having to do everything. I think it's the having to do everything. And I think it's even the well-rounded education is it's a waste of energy.
For example, people.
But wait, here's my next step. I'm going to push it even one step further. And then everybody is paid equally for their gift. So the receptionist who is making the first impression of the company for people who come through the door is paid the same as the CEO who's running the company.
Yeah, no.
Because her talents or their talents are the same and just as important as the person who can oversee.
No.
But do you see how it would bring everybody up?
No, I cannot be honest with you. Like,
Okay, tell me. I love it when somebody dissents because it helps me like understand a deeper understanding.
Let's just say, okay, I'm going to give a real life example. This might come off as selfish or self-absorbed, but this is my.
You got to embrace it.
Yeah, but I'm talking about reality, and this is the truth.
Yeah.
The people in my organization, the most they work in a week is 10 hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
10 hours in a week. Some may go work 16 hours a week, but I work 16 hours a day, every day, Monday through Sunday. If I'm working Monday through Sunday, and let's just say, I wish I was getting paid for this, but I'm not. But like, let's just say if I was getting paid, I want to be compensated from Monday through to my Sunday. And I feel like,
oh, I definitely think you should be compensated on the hourly basis. Like, so if somebody was working 5 hours, they're not going to get the same as somebody who works 16 hours.
But but like, for example, like a CEO, what example I was going to give you earlier before you added the second point is, even if you're a cardiologist, you specialize in the heart and things to do with the heart, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you still need to know other basic things and excel at it for you to be able to focus solely on one thing. Like, you have to be like, okay, if I do this, if I cut an artery, it's going to affect the other parts of the body.
That's true.
And stuff like that. And I feel like, and when that happens, is he going to be like, I need to call somebody in? Like, there's certain situation where you call in somebody in, but if it's something just glue something together, Is he really going to call someone to scrub in for surgery if it's just gluing things together? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I would say that is like that would be like somebody who's somebody who's a cardiologist is going to be interested in the human body. My question is, do you need your cardiologist to be able to fix your car?
No, because that's not your job. But I
Right.
don't. That's two very different examples. It's like a cardiologist. You could be specializing in,
Mm-hmm.
but one day they need you to be in accident emergency in adults.
Mm-hmm.
So not everybody's going to come to accident emergency with a heart issue. Some may,
Right.
but like other people might come in and be like, "Oh, I have a concussion," but a concussion doesn't necessarily affect your heart.
Right. But do you want somebody who's not specialized in your brain, like in the brain, to be like diagnosing your concussion? No. Do you want
But an
like a
emergency,
heart surgeon fixing your car brakes? No.
an emergency consult, like an accident emergency consultant, they don't specialize in specific. A consultant will, sorry, an emergency doctor
Yeah.
is not specializing in every. They're specializing in not specializing in everything, but they
They're
know
specializing in
about everything.
yes. And then
But
they
you get a
send them to the
consultant.
specialist,
Like you don't
right?
need a
Or yeah.
consultant to diagnose you with a concussion. That is very easily
Mhm.
diagnosable by a doctor in accident emergency.
Yes, and right. It can be diagnosed, but should it be treated by a doctor?
I feel like
Or should it be
if
treated
it's to
by
a
a
point
specialist?
where you know, it's I feel like if a concussion needs a treatment, you can get advice from a doctor, but it's a consultancy role, really. Consultants
Yeah.
offer consultancy. They
Yeah.
don't offer treatment. If they need treatment, they might refer you to somebody else,
Yeah.
unless it's like an
Yeah.
immediate death or life or death situation. And
Right.
I feel like,
So to me, it would be like if you're an emergency room doctor, that is what you're into. It's like the sort of the like
like
fast
ADHD.
paced, different. Yeah, it's like it's a great job for an ADHDer, right? It's like different. Every person's coming through a different thing. Can you hyper focus on exactly all the symptoms that they're having to set to know whether they need to be further, right? So to me, it's still somebody following their gifts.
But like, what if if you're a like, I feel like, but if
I'm blowing your mind here. Okay.
because I'm like because I know what I want to say, but I can't articulate it because it's like I feel like an emergency doctor is a perfect example. It's like, for example, right? Okay, we're doing surgery. Okay, we're doing surgery. No, not us. Surgeons are doing surgery, and and they ask this. The way that they're taught is you have these tools, and this is how you do the operation. This is what you do if something goes wrong. They're taught that. Whereas if you're in the war zone
Mm-hmm.
and you need to give someone medical aid, you're not gonna, and you don't have all the tools. You're not gonna let that person die. You need to do what you can, to preserve life or whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
Like, but you're not specialized in doing so, but you're not gonna let somebody die if you just don't have the tools.
Right. Well, you might have to, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have the tools. It still doesn't prove.
But I'm trying. It's like even if you're not specialized in tools are something that surgeons specialize in, and it's something like you use this, and this will cut this deep.
Right.
This will
Yeah.
just leave a graze. This is just a poke
Yeah.
around, whatever they do.
Yeah.
But even though you don't know what a certain tool doesn't mean you're going to be like, okay, sorry, like you're just gonna have to die. Like, bye. Like I feel like you should
I'm not saying, I think that it's like there's a difference between, I think what you're
really
pulling in is like there's an emergency, right? That's different than there's a job that you do every day.
But I feel like some people's like jobs revolve around emergencies.
Yeah, but that's a specialty.
Is it a specialty though? I feel like, for example, support worker roles, even though you need a special qualification, like not a special qualification, a certain qualification, they're still it's easy to get because you look the
For
amount
some
of people.
people, right?
I feel like it's quite easy to get because the amount of incompetent fucks, sorry, the amount of incompetent people working in, you know what? I'm gonna go back to what I said, incompetent fucks. That's what it really is.
Yeah,
Working in healthcare or supporting people in where they live,
right.
they can't do the job. They get a
Right.
qualification, obviously
That's
qualification,
why I feel like if you allowed everybody to get paid for what they are competent about,
but
right?
then who's gonna do
Equally,
what they
then people would follow their passion and their purpose versus like, oh, this is a better paycheck. Even though I don't like it, I'm going to do it, even though I'm not that great at it.
but what if you're never like even if you're great at something, but doesn't mean it's gonna bring you happiness. And if you're doing the same thing every single day, like where's the challenge in your job? What makes it like satisfying? Like, at the end of the day, you're like, you know what? I want a tub of Ben and Jerry's. And you actually don't like Ben and Jerry's anymore. Haagen-Dazs. You're gonna get
Yeah.
some Haagen-Dazs, and you're gonna be like, oh wait, I'm gonna eat the whole like tub of ice cream because you know what? I did a great day at work. Not like, oh, I did the same thing. I'm bored. I don't get any motivation.
Right. Some people like doing the same thing.
I know, but like it will get to a point where you don't
And
like.
then other people may be like, say, in marketing, but their everyday task isn't the same. There's lots of options of things to do in marketing, but they're the marketing specialist, right?
We've so off track.
Right. We haven't even talked about what we're here. But all I'm saying is there's a way to change the world from the bottom up.
But is changing the world going to be detrimental to the world
Right now,
in the
we're
ways
in
that you're thinking?
the way we're doing things now is detrimental to the world and to humanity.
But replacing it with something less detrimental, what you're saying is, you're
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know for sure because it hasn't been tried, but yeah, I think we got to think outside the box because the box isn't working.
mm. Sorry, my mind just went blank. Yeah, we're so off track.
Right. Do we need to get back to trauma? Well, let's tie it back to trauma. Here's why. Because the current box does not honor individuals' humanity. It does not honor. It's like you're out of the box, you're not worth it. You're not valued. Your skills are out of the box, not valued.
So can you
Your
share a specific, like, I agree with you because that's what our
Mhm.
non-elected prime minister is doing. Can you share a specific instance where you felt the weight of societal labels and expectations the most profoundly, and how did you navigate through it?
School, for sure.
Yeah.
Like having to sit,
Mhm.
growing up, having to sit for 6 hours a day and expect to be sitting quietly, not disruptive. Raise your hand before you speak. To me, a lot of the thinking at school wasn't thinking, it was regurgitating. It was like, here's what you need to learn, the sage on the stage, right? And here's what you're going to be tested on. Can you regurgitate or, tell me what I've said? Kind of thing, instead of teaching me how to think. They were teaching me what to think.
Hmm.
And for me, as a dyslexic who goes by gist and memorizing details is a nightmare, and ADHD sitting, I just felt like literally a caged tiger. It took me all of my energy to just focus on sitting quietly and not raising my hand, and like raising my hand before I spoke if I was engaged at all. But the rest of the time, it was like being in prison. So the societal norms of this expectation of me being able to sit quietly, memorize what's being said to me on the first time, and then being able to say it exactly as it was said, or, say what they thought was, I couldn't live up to that expectation. And so so to me, it made me feel like every year we have what we call standardized tests, so there's a norm group, and either your skills are at the normal level and they've developed at the normal level, or you're, in advanced or behind. I was always behind. So to me, that felt like I was a failure. Like it was always on me. It was never like, is this system failing this child? No, it was this child's failing.
And I feel like this is a conversation that I had with a member of staff that was supporting me, and I'm like, it's like this again. What I'm going to say is controversial. With these like spoiled children or misbehaved children or whatever, I don't think children can be a certain way. Like they can come off as spoilt, they can't behave properly, they're rude, they're disruptive. But everything they are exposed to, up to 18 pretty much, and up to 16, 18, sometimes 25 if you have disabilities, are all in conditioned environments. They go to school, they come back, they're in extracurriculum, they are in after school clubs, they go to appointments, they go back home. Everything is conditioned. So how can a child be a certain way and be described? No, it's a parenting failure, or I think blaming on children. Oh, that child's spoiled. No, that child is not spoiled. They're just being conditioned in a certain way, which comes off as what society perceives as spoiled. I do not think children misbehave or whatever. I think some things they do is like, cannot be tolerated, when they're older. But it's explaining to them you cannot behave this way because it's not nice. The other person gets hurt, whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't think children can be a certain way. Everything they do until the age of 18, 25 is conditioned. Even if they go, let's just say when they're 11, a lot of people like start, like traveling independently and stuff like that at the age of 11. So at 11 years old, even when you're meeting your friends outside, you're in a conditioned environment. You're with your friends. This is what you're seeing. This is the way they are. This is what they're behaving. Whether it's at their house, you're exposed to different environments. But again, they're always conditioned. You're meeting your friends to do something.
Yeah.
I feel like until you're out in the world and you're experiencing different parts of the world, on how your life, like different experiences throughout your life, I feel like I think I don't know how to conclude this, but I don't think children have the capacity. They might know right from wrong, but I don't think they have the capacity to understand fully what is going on. Because they're always in conditioned environments. They're always taught, like, for example, you in school, right? You have to raise your hand up. You have to be this way. This is the cues that you follow. This is the whatever.
Yeah.
Always in conditioned environments. How do they know who their true self is, what their true selves are like, if they're always in condition?
There's only one condition, right? So that's my real issue with, okay. That's sorry, my husband's going to work, so I'm waving. So that's my issue with the systems that we have, right? It's all comes back to, it's like one system, one way to do things, or this expectation that we have to fit into, or even the system of government. This is how politics is. This is the system. It's like there should be a variety of options for the variety of humanity and how we operate best.
Yeah, there's this lady on LinkedIn. She was talking about her daughter, And her daughter is like, from what I've never met her daughter, I've only see like heard
Yeah.
about her daughter through her posts. Her daughter seems like a vibrant, enthusiastic, bubbly young person, but the school, they don't pick on her when she like raises her hand, or like
Hmm.
are trying to silence her because she's full of ideas. She's like her, you
Yeah.
can see like that she's passionate, she's whatever, and school wants to silence that part of her. But if you
Yeah.
silence that part of her, she's not going to be confident when she's an adult, or even now, because if you don't like ask
Yeah.
her, yeah, what you're seeing as disruptive is actually a child learning and exploring ideas. And as a teacher, it's your job to help explore the ideas. You know,
Right.
it might be like,
Yeah.
okay, why didn't you write it down on the whiteboard? And then when I set the task, I'll come and talk to you about the idea. Like, it doesn't have to be right there and then.
Yeah.
Just
Right.
like, and she seems like just such wonderful ideas that just that she wants to share and explore. But like everybody at school is just saying, no, we're doing this. This is the structure we're following. And that's it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what's the point of going to school then? School's not about just about education. It's about
No.
exploring who you are, figuring things
Right.
out. Like it's like children. It's like
But
this is
that's like school currently, that isn't what school's about. It's about, if you're a teacher, I'm just going to like also say how the system affects everyone. It's not just the students, it's the teachers and what they're expected to do. Like my oldest sister is in educational policy, and she calls it the gravitational pull back to this unhealthy system. So the teachers in the United States, they're given this expectation of the curriculum and what they're going to teach the kids in this year, and da 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 da. And so it's like this whole system is set up against kids learning how to think, and only set towards learning what to think, right? Or what to learn. And so even if that teacher is curious and wants to explore that idea, they feel this pressure of, okay, if we spend the next hour exploring this idea and making connections, then that's an hour that I haven't been teaching what they're going to be tested on, and I'm going to be like evaluated on. So it's like this. Yeah, go ahead.
But isn't it a teacher? I feel like there's a way, for example, like just what we did like 10, 15 minutes ago, where
Yeah.
maybe longer, where we went obviously off topic, but you then brought it back to what we were originally going to talk about. But isn't like the teacher that I have, right? If we go through certain life experiences or whatever, she will link it back to what we were talking about. And I feel like as a teacher, I've only delivered training and like stuff like that, so I don't have teaching experience. But
You're teaching right now.
mhm, more you
You're
than me.
teaching your listeners, and you're teaching me. You are a teacher. You're a master teacher. But
Yeah,
go ahead.
not a math teacher.
I want you to. Oh, I want you.
Um, yeah, and I'm like, isn't it a teacher's responsibility to bring it back? Like even when you're talking, that question that I had when I asked about society and feeling that pressure, I was able to bring it back and think of a question to suit what we were just talking about, but not all,
Right.
but not just be like, okay, let me just ask you about dyslexia, which we weren't talking about at all.
Yeah.
It was a
Yeah.
random thing. It's like it was relevant, but isn't it a teacher's responsibility to bring it back? Like, to be able to explore ideas and be like, okay, we can explore this at different time, but we're going to explore it. And
Yeah.
I feel like there's ways to follow the curriculum, because in the UK we have a curriculum set by the government that I think everybody
Yeah.
follows. There might be a few like little changes in different parts of the countries in the United Kingdom, but isn't like you can teach, like for example, like plays, right? Like there's this play
Hmm.
about it's a Shakespeare play, Titania. It's about the, what's the Slow Prince called? There's a Shakespeare play. Can't
Hmm.
remember the name. But we didn't read the play. We were just given roles and you act this out, you act that out, and and then we'll
Yeah.
change the roles and we let other people do it. So it's like an interactive thing. You're not reading the play and trying to analyze the play as you go along. You're feeling that play.
Yeah,
You're feeling these emotions. You're getting attached to this character whilst acting them out, and it can help widen your perspective.
totally.
It's like
Yeah,
you're teaching the same thing, but just in a different way. And I feel like the one thing that
yeah,
education is not, because of the curriculum suppressions and stuff like that, is it's not adapted to the audience. The audience isn't
yeah,
the students, sorry. And I feel like how are you
yeah,
adapting to if you're not adapting to the students, and in a classroom in the UK, there can be up to 30 people in a classroom.
yeah. Same with us.
Yeah, so you can't, how are you able to adapt it to 30 people? You can't.
You can't set up for failure. That's our system is set up for failure. Yeah. They end up teaching to the middle, right? And then there's all of these outliers. And we know the middle is only 1/3. The other 2/3 are the outliers,
And
right?
I feel like it's like, and I feel like a classroom should not be bigger than any like in like mainstream. I don't think it should be bigger than 15.
I agree.
Like
Yeah.
30.
So here's what I think the difference of what you were explaining with using the Shakespeare play and having people act in different parts so they could get different perspectives and widening their understanding of the view of how different people view their world versus reading the play and analyzing it, right? It's like there's a different, to me, as a teacher in special education, for me, it was all about what I would call a spiral of co-creation, right? So it wasn't me saying, this is how you read. It's me talking to the student about what do you know and how do you know, how'd you learn what you know now? And then I can figure out, oh, if they learned it through listening or if they learned it through doing, then I can utilize that to co-create a way that they can read. But it's about teaching and learning together. So I learned as much as a teacher as the student was learning as a student. So we were both student teacher, right? It's co-creating. And that's when you get that widening perspective versus trying to make it a one way. For me, school always felt like a one way, like it was coming at me. It was never with me. And even when I would try and engage, it would be because I'm dyslexic, it would be to maybe the average person, it would be this wild connection that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. But if they were curious, they would see the connection.
Yeah. The one thing that I feel like is like even to places I lived in, I've lived in two amazing places which I call home.
Yeah.
And the last placement I was as a child was the best placement I've ever been at. I could be myself, like authentically myself. In the first place that I call home, I could be myself, but my neurodivergence was new, is misunderstood. Was like they didn't understand neurodivergence fully, but they were competent. They were very trauma informed. They were very lovely. They were nice. It was a family-like environment. And the second one, at Danny's place, I could be myself. He had ADHD. The service manager, Augustine, he had ADHD. Like, and the other people, they were fucked up in their own ways. And it was like,
yeah, we all are.
And it was great, and I could be myself. I can skim as much as I want, and they're like, "What are you doing?" They're not gonna be like that. And when they are, they're like, "This girl's crazy," and I'm like, "It's like I can skim, I can vocally stim, I can jump around." I would jump around. I couldn't contain my energy, so I would jump around. Like I get so hyperactive. Once I got so hyperactive, this was when I was at like my family home. I was so hyperactive that I fell off a table in my room. Yeah, tailbone injuries are not fun. But yeah, it's just it's like I could do whatever I want. And it's just ability to do what I want, like that I have to suppress, allows me to learn because my basic needs are met. So
Right.
if I can be myself, then I can learn. I don't have to worry about, oh my God, I can't do this, I can't say this, I can't. Yeah, and it's like,
Right.
so for example, I had this conversation with someone, um, like one of the managers at the first place I call home, and I said they came over for dinner, and I was like, oh, I have gold cutlery, everything is gold. Um, and I was like, do you know silver hurts my eyes? And they were like laughing because they were like, she's just being silly. Because it's like people with like autism, they don't realize they have
Yeah.
hypersensitivity until they get a diagnosis or until they're on their
Right.
way to get a diagnosis because they're like, what is this?
Yeah.
You couldn't pinpoint what was wrong.
Yeah.
And I have everything I have is gold because silver
That's
hurt.
cool.
Yeah,
Here, should I cover this up? Is that
no, fine. Well,
no, but see, that's the cool thing, right? To like be able to hear about your world to me is like I get so curious. I'm like, wow, okay, so how did you figure that out? And what does that feel like? And all of that. And that's what makes teams and neurodiversity and like honoring everybody's needs and also valuing their gifts,
mm,
it makes the world better. And everything we've learned in special education is any change that we make it more accessible for different types of learners also makes it better for everybody. So going into a workplace, so Google is one of the employers that I've talked to some of their managers about how they manage neuro-distinct brains, because in tech there are a lot of neuro-distinct brains because they're highly specialized and they do it's like their special interest, and they are, so Google has learned how to harness that. But in every Google environment, they have like sensory deprivation rooms. They have rooms, they call them nap rooms or whatever. And it's not just the autistic people that go there to like not be overstimulated. It's everybody goes into the nap room to be quiet and have quiet time. And so that one accommodation and is good for everyone's existence. So I feel like the more we explore the far ends without taking a stand about what's right or wrong,
mm,
the more we can improve the world for everybody.
yeah.
And I think I kind of think, to get back to the government, to tie that back in, is what I see in the United States is they're like, well, why should we be spending our money on these people, right, that maybe aren't putting into the Social Security thing, but we've set it up for them to fail. For us, if you're on disability, which is like barely helping you survive, and you get a job and you start working 18 hours, if you earn too much, then your disability is taken away.
Yeah, I feel like in the UK we have universal credit,
Mm-hmm.
um, which is if you earn more than 25 or 26,000 pounds, then they won't pay you for that month, which is which is okay. But for people in America, 26,000 pounds doesn't seem like a lot, but is a comfortable way to live with
Yeah.
26,000 pounds for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it will be different if you have like children. You get extra money if you
Wait,
have.
26,000 pounds in a month?
No, no, a year.
In a year? Yeah, that would be hard here. Well, I don't know how, 26,000 is really would be hard here. For instance, like rent in the town that I live in, I mean, the expenses are so different. And I don't know. I guess that's
We
another
have
thing that's sort
we
of
have like
unfair, right? If you live where I live, the rent's 2,400. You go to like Ohio, you might be able to rent something for 800. But so then every person who's on disability has to move someplace where they can afford to live. I don't, that you know what? So there, it's really a technical. The service, the basic level of service is very complex.
and the thing is like with like, there's I feel like there's a lot of things that people in the UK don't appreciate
Hmm.
about the UK. So basically, if you like let's just say you earn £10,
Hmm.
you only have to pay 55 pence for each pound that you earn. No, it
Yeah.
just gets subtracted from
Wait,
what
so how many pence is in a pound?
100.
Oh, okay. So it's like our penny to a dollar. Okay, got it.
Yeah. Like so if you have like so
So every time, everything you earn, the
yeah, it just
government
gets
takes
subtracted. So if I earn
55%
10,
of
if I
that.
get
Yeah.
okay, if my universal credit, let me make a number up. Give me a number that has like 3 digits in it. Let's say
Like, let's make
600.
it easy. 100.
Okay, let's say it's 100 and I earn £20, right?
Hmm.
So I will be paying 20 times 0.55. So I have to pay 11 pounds gets subtracted from my benefits. So
Hmm.
and then I get £89 instead of the full
Yeah.
100, which is absolutely fine. Whereas in some countries they just scrap the whole thing. If you
Yeah.
get paid, you get paid, that's it.
Yeah. Ours. Yeah.
But what you call property tax, I think that's equivalent of council
Hmm.
tax. If you're
Hmm.
single, like you live by yourself or whatever, or you live in a if you're single, you get 25% off. If you're a care leaver,
Hmm.
you don't have to pay council tax until you're 25. And if you have disabilities, you get more money. If you have children, you get more money for one child, more money for the second child. Any child more than that, you get a what's it called? Like a
Yeah.
it
And is
doesn't
that true for like fathers and mothers? So if
yes.
you're so if you're married,
It
the father
depends.
would get more money and the mom would get more
No,
money, or if you're married, you get
yeah,
less because you,
if you're married, you get more money, but it's between both of you get a set amount of money that
right.
you have to share. But if you
Yeah.
are like, and also it depends. You can't get like automatically. I don't know if you have this in America. You automatically get child benefits if you have a child in the
Yeah,
UK.
no.
That everybody who
Oh,
has
so for us, we get a child tax credit. So maybe we wouldn't get money from the government, but if you earn money, then you would get like, I feel, and now my husband does the taxes, but I think it was like $22,500 for the
per child.
year per child as a tax credit. As a like, you don't get money, but you don't have to pay taxes. Yeah, it's and in our system too. So say we call it welfare. Say there's a family that is in poverty, the parents aren't working, they can get welfare, but the welfare thing will give you more money for your child. But if you're married, you actually get less money. So it's like, it's not like, oh, the father gets what he gets for the child and the mom gets what she gets for the child. If they come together, they get less money. So it makes sense for them to not be married. So it's like we're almost paying people to wreck their family, right? Because if they're divorced or if they're not married, they'll get more money.
And the thing is, if you don't, so so I did the math. So if you have one child who's the eldest child, you get £25 and 60 pence per week,
Wow.
which is quite significant. And and that And so
Wait, that like comes in a check from the government? How do you get the money?
Directly to your bank.
Wow.
So you get £102.40.
And everybody gets that.
If you
doesn't matter how rich or how poor.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. If you have a child, you get that money. Any child younger than that will get £16.95 a week. So that will be.
Why is it for the younger? Why would the younger child be less expensive?
Because what happens is some people have children just for the sake
just to get the money. Yeah.
And some people will go to have ridiculous amounts of children. I feel like let me rephrase that, because I want 8 to 11 children, right? But doesn't mean, like, I don't find it ridiculous, but I'm not having I don't want to have children just because I want a payment from money going into my bank account.
Yeah.
That's not why I want children. You know, some people's intentions are just for a higher benefit. But if your child comes into care, it stops. That child's portion will stop. You don't get that child.
So wait, if your child is like, when you say comes into care, is that what our foster system is? So like that child gets taken away from their family and placed in like the government is caring for them? Is that what that means?
Yeah, it doesn't have to necessarily be foster care. It can either be so if you go to prison or detention, you're automatically in care. So but like
so that's taken away. I get it.
It's taken away, but there's voluntary removal as well. So that'll be a section 20 where your parents sign an agreement. And if that section 20 is not signed, you can go to court and get that.
Yeah.
It doesn't look good when you want to apply for a full care order. But it could be foster care, residential, whatever it may be. But that would be taken away, and it would be given to the child as pocket money and clothing allowance or whatever. So, and it might be a bit more, like something added on top, because when I was 14, I used to get £40, and 10 of that will go into my savings. So I would get £30 a week, and for a month it's £120.
Yeah.
So I feel like people don't appreciate the small little things.
Oh yeah. That's really amazing.
And we get
because I don't think that any money goes directly to the child in the United States. It goes only to their caregivers. So if you're taken out and put in care of the government, no matter where you are, that goes directly to your caregivers, but it's not like the child gets money.
And if you're in, I don't know about other local authorities, but in Merton, this is certainly the case. If you are looked after your child, but you're in prison or even a care prison, you're in prison or a youth detention center, you'll get £10 a week.
In the center. Yeah. See, no, that definitely does not happen here.
Yeah, and it's like, so there's little different things.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because I think that.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Do you have cost of living top-ups? Interesting.
So some jobs will take the cost of living. So my husband runs a school, and when he's looking at raises for the year, they do try and take into consideration the cost of living, but then it's the school's responsibility to pay it if they choose, but they don't have to, right? So he does it. He's like, okay, cost of living has gone up 3% or whatever. So a 3% raise is really just the same. And then if we do want to actually give them a raise, we have to make it higher than that kind of thing. But there's no law that he has to do that.
Like the UK government, they did this thing. If you're on certain benefits, there was £1,198 that were paid for each individual that were on certain benefits. So there was 4 payments that were done. So there was £301. There was an payment, and then £300, and then it was £299, and then 298, and then I think around Christmas time there was a £10 as well.
Yeah. So I don't know this for sure because I'm not on public assistance, but I do not think there is any cost of living raise. Like I think it stays the same.
Yeah.
And I think that's true even once we're old and retired for our Social Security benefits. It stays the same. It doesn't go up.
I feel like you should defer if you have disabilities, children, etc.
Total. There is so much we should do. Oh my
Like,
gosh. It's
I
like,
don't know, this
it's
is UK,
neglect. It's just, yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a UK thing, like statistic, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure if it's an American about America, but like for people with disabilities is that their monthly expenses are £975 more expensive than the average person.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. My daughter, who's in a wheelchair, there's so much equipment with that like is needed for her to live like a person who can access everything. It's crazy expensive. And luckily she's an engineer, so she makes great money, but at the same time, yeah, she gets no help with that. And even insurance doesn't always cover it. And we pay for private insurance. We don't have governmental insurance. It's, yeah, it's like a double down on
And I feel
expense.
like this
And
goes
yeah,
into societal perceptions of neurodivergent individuals or people with disabilities. And I don't think in certain countries, or even like countries that are doing well, I don't think the view of has evolved that much. It's
yeah,
evolved at a very low. It's a very so
true. That's true.
your government, like
Yeah, but even when you're at the bottom, even a little bit of evolution seems so great. And so maybe, and back to our original thing about neurodiverse, like neurodistinctions being called a disability, I think maybe that's where my resistance comes because it's like 100%. I'm okay. Like we do have a disability, but at the same time, it's the word that makes me, it's the negative connotation that travels with that word in the United States. And so maybe instead of saying, I don't want to be called disabled, I should be like you are saying, hey, disabled isn't a negative thing. It's just a statement of who I am and how I operate, right? Because right now I feel like in the United States, if you are deemed disabled, it's like because of the laws that go with it, employers are like, oh, I don't know if we want to hire them because then we could get sued if we're not accessible.
in America, do you have to disclose disabilities before applying jobs?
No, and they're not allowed to ask.
Same here. I feel like,
However, but then I feel like that in itself is also like setting us up for failure, right? Because, oh, we can't say who we are and what we need to do our best work because then we might be discriminated against. But then we're getting this job that might not meet our needs or allow us to do our best work. And to actually sue somebody, you would have to have the means to do that in the United States, right? So if it's a civil suit, you don't get a lawyer automatically, right? It's only if it's a criminal thing. So if you're accused of a crime, the state will pay for a lawyer. But if it's a civil suit, like I want to sue them because they didn't have a ramp for me to get in, you have to hire your own lawyer. So it's stacked against us, period.
Um, it's like oh, and the thing is, I feel like there's a one set fee in America as well, isn't there? And then in the UK, if
What's a one set fee?
like there's a certain amount that you have to pay regardless of the money that you're claiming for.
To who? Wait, explain that
Like
a little more.
the court.
I'm struggling.
So
For the court. Yeah. So there's what we're called like a small claims court. They
yeah.
can handle anything under, I think it's 20,000, but anything other than that, you go to the big court and there's no one set fee. Like it's a lot, right? It's like however many hours you're paying your lawyer to work, however, yeah, it's just, yeah.
In the UK, it's like set amount of fees. So if you is up to £300, the claim amount is up to £300, then you pay £35, and that will be court fees. And then 300 above £300 to 500 is £50, and then above 500 to 1,000 70.
Oh, interesting.
So and then it goes up to 80, and then let's just say you're making a claim more than 200,000, that's only 10%.
Wow. And that just goes to the court. That goes to like the judge who's sitting there.
Sorry, I said it wrong. £10,000 of anything more than £200,000.
Wow. Yeah. So I think we do have to pay filing fees and things like that, but I don't know enough about.
Yeah.
I don't think that it goes. I don't know. I shouldn't speak because I don't know about it. But it's the real expense is paying the lawyers to represent you.
Yeah. We've gone all over the place. I'm just thinking.
Oh my Lord. We didn't even talk about, I don't even know what we were supposed to talk about, but we did. We definitely talked about some controversial things. I'm sure we'll get some comments.
Yeah. One thing that I'm thinking of is it's very like, ADHDs are not compatible. That's what I got from this.
Well, I think it's it's not that the ADHDs aren't compatible. I think it's the like dyslexia and the, autism that is like harder, but that's why I think it's like magical because we have the two types of brains, right? So it's like I'm getting the 50,000 and you're getting the microprocessing. I hope you enjoyed it because I enjoyed talking to you and like hearing the way you think, and it's just amazing. And I do want to say how proud I am of you, even though it's like that's not that you need me to be proud of you, but I'm just so impressed by your openness, your curiosity, your willingness to like go out there and be who you are and not mask and talk about it and disagree, but also like you're just an amazing individual. And I want to thank you for getting the message out to the world about who you are and why it's so great. Because if everyone lived like that, then I think humanity would be better. It's when we mask who we are and feel shame about who we are that the victimization starts happening.
Yeah. I have a question. Would you like to film a second part to this podcast, which is a bit more structured?
Oh, sure. Do you think we could do it?
I thought yeah, I think we can. Definitely.
All right. We would have to really send a good intention to like.
Yeah, be like, it should be some sort of signal being like.
Maybe we need a moderator.
Like
to be like, bring it back.
Like a
And if you want to scrap this one, it's okay because we really
no,
didn't
I
talk
feel
about,
like
yeah, yeah.
it's great, but I feel like we need. I feel like even I want this to go out as one podcast, this and the
Yeah.
other one. But I feel like there's a lot of opinions,
Hmm.
which is great because we love that. But I feel like there
Yeah.
also needs to be a bit more structure and a more
Experience.
point because it just
Yeah.
seems like we're just like talking. And I feel like for people who are not neurodivergent who are listening in, it will feel very
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Just like on the brain train. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and that's why I think maybe if you listen to it back or send it to me and I'll listen to it back, if we feel like it's just totally off the wall, we could always just retake.
Yeah.